Okay, well, I'm Patti Provost, and this is my husband Larry. And just a little about us, so you'll kind of know how we got started doing this. Growing up, my family moved to Michigan, and my mom remarried, and so at that point there were 13 of us all in one house. Because my mom had 6 kids and my stepdad had 5 kids, and so it made quite a crew. So we had a garden, and it was about a quarter of a mile long. That's how long each row was. And so what we couldn't eat immediately, we started canning and preserving. And so for about 50 years, off and on throughout my life, I've been canning and preserving, thanks to my mom getting us started. And
did you say quarter mile long?
A quarter mile long. We lived out in the country in Michigan. Wow. And everything just grows like crazy there. It's so humid that we didn't have to worry about watering. Usually it was that it would get too much water. And so yeah, it was a huge garden. But there were so many of us to keep it up that, and when we were bottling, it was all hands on deck. Everybody helped. And at that point, I was just 6 years old, and so I had some of the simpler tasks of like husking the corn and things like that. But so that's how it started for me. And then it's our second marriage for both of us. And when I married Larry, he had at least 500 bottling jars on his shelf.
Oh, wow.
At least maybe more. But I think,
is that why you said yes?
yeah. It was his orchard and his jars. No. But we've worked together on bottling. And I brought a picture of our family because they're why we do it now. And that picture actually has 5 fewer in it. We have 5 more grandkids since that picture was taken. So for us, we worry that if something happens to the food supply in the nation, what will our kids do? What will our grandkids do? And so that's a huge motivating factor for us, is that at least we know that we'll have a few things on the shelf that we might be able to share with them. To help them, and that's where my downfall is. And gratefully, Larry's better at this than me. But once it's in the bottle and on the shelf, that's my security blanket. And so I have a really hard time utilizing it because it just makes me feel secure knowing that it's there. But he's a lot better about saying we've got to eat a bottle of peaches tonight or get something out of the pantry. And so. I told Fred when he asked us if we would come and teach this, I said, sometimes our chickens get more of what we bottle than we do. Because we just go through it and say, oh, this just doesn't look appetizing anymore, but it's probably still healthy for them. So
sometimes we overdo it. You know, we don't want to waste anything. So, you know, if it's a good apple crop, then we, you know, I think one year we did 160 jars of apple juice.
Apple juice. Oh yeah, apple sauce, and then even more apple juice.
So we didn't use all that. But.
So when we got married, we planted a few more trees, but had a 55 tree orchard. And so the variety of fruits and things that we would get from the orchards, we would try to bottle and preserve. But since then, pests and bugs and things have really downsized our orchard. So we have maybe 20 trees now, but the family at home is smaller too, so it's probably better that we have fewer trees. Because back then we had boys that would go out and help us pick everything, and they would even go down to the mailboxes and sell the cherries and get rid of the excess if we had a really good crop. So anyway, that's a little bit about us. Was that enough? So, you know,
what kind of apples are the best apples for applesauce?
I've heard Granny Smith.
You've heard? Is that your favorite?
Pardon?
Is that your favorite? Since you've had so many trees.
We mix them all and blend them all together. But
2 years ago, my dad passed away, and he lived up in Heber, but that's about the only thing I get to grow is apples up there. But he had a bumper crop 2 years ago, and they gave as many as they could away to the neighbors and friends and stuff. And I told him, well, I'm not going to let those go to waste. So I drove up there. I brought 15 bushel back.
Oh my gosh.
And so we were getting about
on top of what we grew.
Yeah. I think I had 150 jars of the apple juice 2 years ago, but last year we didn't have any, so.
About how long is the shelf life on applesauce?
It just, the,
It loses its color after about
Oh,
3 or 4 years.
yeah,
I
this
think it
is,
still tastes good, but
yeah, I've eaten it 10 years old.
it just, it starts to brown and not look as
I
appetizing.
didn't make
So-
enough because we went through it so fast. It was so good. So much better than store.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what's so nice about it too, is you know what's in it. And it does, there's a better flavor to it. I feel that way with everything that we grow, that it just tastes better.
Is your orchard done with that? or-
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. So it was about a third of an acre, wasn't it? A third of an acre, and now it's half
of
that.
our orchard,
Yeah.
yeah.
If you walk through the park and to the top of the hill.
That's where you go to pick apples. No, I'm kidding.
That's what our friend tells us, if you see somebody out there with a flashlight at night, don't shoot. That's what he says, he's like, because I know where to come when I can't get it at the grocery store. But, yeah. So yeah, if you come at night with a flashlight, we'll take
They'll let the dogs out, but they won't shoot.
If you want to start with the juicer, we can show you
Yeah.
this.
So we'll tell you a little bit about the couple of kinds of ways to do juicing. We have grapevines as well as the apple trees.
No.
I think your only plugs are on this side.
This table. For some reason, we thought there was a one over
Sorry, I
there.
interrupted her.
Oh, I was just gonna show you the kinds of juicers that you can use. So the easiest and least expensive to get started with would be a steam juicer. And the steam juicer, the way it works is you load the fruit in this top basket. So if you're doing grapes, we always take the grapes off the stem, but it says you can do it either way. We just felt like it had more of a woody flavor to the grapes or something to the juice. But
Some stuff that comes out of the grape juice, I don't know if it's that good for you, but
so
there's
there's,
that one and there's.
yeah, these are both steam juicers. This one has a little bit bigger basket in it for the fruit. So you put the fruit in the top, and then this middle compartment is where the juice. So you see how there's holes in the bottom of this. It allows, once the fruit heats up, it allows the juice to seep out, and then it goes into this second portion of this. And then you'll always have the tube attached, and you'll want to make sure that there's a way to clamp it off, because that stops the juice from just free flowing. And so once it cooks down a little bit, you'll just keep an eye on it so that it doesn't overflow your
So
juice.
you put the water in here.
Yeah, and then the water goes in the very bottom.
This steam comes up. Through those holes.
It comes up through the center, so where the tube accumulates, this center section is open so that the steam comes up through that.
So you put water in that?
In the bottom, yeah, and something we found, you'll have to check that, it usually takes a couple of hours to steam juice, and, but you'll want to keep an eye on your water, otherwise the pan will boil dry and it disflavors your juice. And so you just, throughout the process, just lift this off, peek in there, and then just add more hot water. So that's all there is to steam
Do you ever
juicing.
hear of the penny trick? You put a penny in the water, and then it will just make a little jingle noise while it's boiling, and it will stop when
When
the water
it's,
goes out.
oh, that's brilliant.
That's a what? A penny?
Penny or a
Oh.
coin, that's how you build tamales, that's how,
So the
you
boiling
put that in water.
causes
Oh,
jingle.
I've never done
When the
this.
boiling
Same
stops,
thing.
and the water comes
Yeah,
out.
oh, that's brilliant.
Jingle
Is that
goes up.
was our biggest complaint with the steam juicer, I think.
Good.
Yeah, is it, if you lose track of it, then it boils dry and it definitely affects the flavor of the juice. And so that's the steam juicer. So once the juice accumulates, then you just loosen the clamp and hold your jars in there, fill your jars up, and put the lid and the ring on it, and it's ready to go right into the hot water bath to bottle it, so.
So I'm picturing a large pan on the floor underneath to make sure that the juice doesn't go everywhere.
It's pretty clean.
Yeah, I usually.
You can
usually
hold the
it's
jar
not
and
too
not,
bad. Yeah, and another way you could do it, instead of filling it right into the jars, you could fill a pitcher first and then use the pitcher to fill your jars. Larry has really tough hands, and so he's my jar filler. In fact,
I can
he's
just fill them up and
he's
before the
the,
jar gets hot, you can't hold it. Usually, when you get, out of that thing, you probably get a gallon, so you fill up 4 jars. So it goes pretty fast.
Cool.
We'll show them the,
yeah, so we used to steam juice everything until we discovered this incredible Ruby 2000. And I think you can buy them brand new, but we were able to find ours online and bought it used. So this is a commercial juicer, and I'll actually let Larry tell you all about it, because he's
looks like you
he's
see
incredible with it.
a juice bar, the big cities, I guess. You choose an apple and a carrot, and whatever, and anyway, you put it down that hole and it goes down and there's a set of blades on there. So it dumps it down against those blades. That blade's going like crazy fast. So it grinds it up, and then it sends the pulp and the juice up the sides here, and the juice goes through those holes. It's going so fast, and so the juice comes out here. We usually have like a pitcher. I catch some juice, and then all the pulp is discharged out of this other.
So like the apples, we'll put them in a fourth at a time, and it shoots all of the skin and anything that doesn't have juice in it, it shoots right out that big shoot on the side.
The liquid falls down the solid.
Yeah, the liquid is thrown through those holes.
Mhm.
This is centrifugal force,
And it comes out.
and it's caught in this pan here. This pan is on the outside of that. Hole. So anyway, yeah, just as fast as you can feed it, it grinds them and juices them and throws the stuff out.
And what's the name of it?
This is a Ruby 2000.
Ruby.
This is pretty much the one everybody else tries to duplicate. You know, we have, I can't remember the other brands, but this is the original, and everybody else tries to copy it. I think there's one called like Nutrisystem or something like that, or Nutrifast or something. I can't remember. But anyway, these are like $2,500. They're really well built.
But we were able to find it used online, and what was it, 500?
That was like 600, maybe 650, and shipping is good there, just on eBay. But gotta be careful, you know, when you're buying stuff there.
This one came without the pusher, the solar.
Right, so-
you made that one. I
Sold it
didn't-
with the pusher, but when it arrived, it didn't have it. The pusher's like $80 for the nylon pusher, so my friend in Dameron made that for me. You guys put it over on Humphreys. He made that for me, so.
So then the pulp all comes out of there.
Yeah, the pulp comes out.
We had a juicer like this on a much smaller scale. So can you put a whole apple in this one?
Whatever you can get down that hole, it's about that size.
Oh, okay.
So, you know,
The apples we grow, there's usually a worm in every one,
Okay.
and so we like to cut it out of anyway, just to
Yes.
make sure. I mean, it would probably sort the worms out, but just to be safe, we usually cut into our apples before we put them in. And they do say that there's some, what is it?
cyanide or something.
Yeah, in the apple seeds, so.
And it's good for you, actually.
Is it?
Yeah, the myth that it's poisonous from the seed is completely a myth. I've eaten apple seeds my entire life, and I don't think it's affected me well.
So did he. We always eat the entire thing, and there was nothing. I'm like, where's the stuff? He's like, I ate it. Because he's too lazy to get up and throw it away, I think, so.
They taste like cherries
They
anyway,
do,
so.
it's like, it tastes like cherry almond or something, the
Yeah.
seeds.
Yeah, and it's actually good for you. There are nutrients in there.
Well, it does shoot this, most of the seeds out, but
It'll crack them.
it will, yeah, it will cut some open. And so, the first couple of years, we would use an apple filler or a slicer and then, throw the apple in without the core. But yeah, I think it works either way, but it comes out, this juice is so concentrated, the flavor is just so much better than steam juicing or any other type of juice that we would make. So that's what sold us on the, using the Ruby 2000. And so we'll do the same with the grapes, just push them down through and then it shoots all of the juice out and then we bottle it. So,
Just one of these grapes.
yeah, that bottles the grape. So we have both,
Combination of purple and
yeah, we combine,
green, so.
so it doesn't look as purple as most grape juice, but that's why, because we have green grapes also, so,
I have a question.
okay.
No, I have a nice juicer and it'll juice almost anything, but then I'm throwing away pulp. So why make the juice instead of just canned apples?
Yeah, you can, yeah.
But
Yeah,
I
because
mean,
we
it's
do
just-
the same with
So you do
applesauce
all-
and apple,
okay.
yeah, spiced apples.
We had
So-
our mother living with us for 3 years, taking care of her. She had Alzheimer's, but the doctor, she had diabetes, and the doctor says juice, worst thing you can give her, you know.
Yeah,
Juice, just plain
avoid,
juice.
just avoid juice.
Yeah,
He said if it has the pulp in it, then she can digest it better and it's not,
well, it doesn't raise her,
yeah, it won't,
Okay,
sugars up, but
But yeah, if you want to utilize, that'd be the way to go. We got some cinnamon apple slices there
this,
somewhere.
that's the spiced apples, yeah.
And then you
And then
use
the
use the
applesauce.
whole apple and get the fiber you need.
But all the pulp that comes out, we feed it to our chickens.
I see, so it doesn't go to waste. Okay,
So we don't,
that was my
so we
thought.
don't feel too guilty about it, but we also have a Vitamix and we do a lot of juices and drinks, just by putting the whole foods in there, so.
Sure.
And that's one of our favorite ways of doing things. We'll, with our fruit, we'll just chunk it up and freeze it and then put it in the Vitamix and make smoothies or drinks too, so. So we do, yeah, we do the variety, so.
Okay.
All right, so that pretty well covers the juicers. So we got two different kinds of hot water bath canners. We started out with the black water bath canners, but during the summer, we would have them going 24/7, but we would use it a lot, and so it started to rust out. And you can see the inside, it just from overuse. And so we ended up buying these others, just because they hold up so much better. So this is just a
A
big,
little bit smaller, but they'll still hold your 7 jars.
so this is just a big oversized pot, and we bought this to put in the bottom, so that the jars, you can't put them just on the bottom of the pot, or you'll crack it, and then everything you have in it could be wasted. And that's something that you have to be careful with hot water bathing. If whatever you're bottling isn't hot, when you put it in, then you'll want to start with not boiling hot water in your hot water bath, because we've had some inexpensive jars that the bottoms will just break right out of them when it hits that boiling water. So don't do that, because you waste everything that was in that, especially if you're bottling juice, there's no way to reclaim that. So
These are really nice, though, because you can see the height difference. This, by the time you get 7 quarts in there, that thing is just almost to the top, and
it usually boils over the whole time.
then you gotta keep watching it, adding water, but this thing, you can fill it up and it's got a nice lid. These
But yeah, they-
use it,
So
of these fit in there.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to
either
do
way.
pints, you could do, I think the 7 again also, but then you could double layer up.
Yeah, so the whole thing to remember is that whatever size your bottle is, you just need to make sure you have at least an inch of water to cover it when you're hot water bathing. So that's where it gets a little bit tight with the shorter can, that it makes it a little bit tough to. And since we were doing so much bottling, we had a gas outlet on our back deck. And a neighbor just said, I have this free gas stove if anybody wants one. And so we're kind of redneck that way. We have a stove out on our back deck, but that's where we do all of our bottling. So during the summer when it's hot, it doesn't heat the house up.
Do I look like a redneck? Because I do we've got exactly the same thing.
It's been amazing. We can get several going out on the stove outside and just keep them going from one batch to the next. So so there's a few tools that you for sure want. And our sweet little daughter-in-law, she has an apricot tree. And so 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago now, she had picked all of her apricots and she said, I'm gonna make apricot jam, tell me what I need to do. And so she went and bought the pectin and she had the jars already, the little jam jars. And so I tried to explain to her over the phone, well, you'll need a pot that's deep enough that you'll at least get an inch of water over the top of the jar. But she didn't have any of the tools to be able to set the jars down in the boiling water and to take them out when they were done. And so she finally called and said, can I just bring it up to your house and you help me? It's just like I've burned my hands and it's just been miserable and it was just an awful experience for her. And our son said to her, you know, you can buy a bottle of jam for $4. You should probably just do that from now on. But she was determined that she was going to make jam. So that I have a handout that I prepared for you because that's really one of the most important getting started basics is that you'll want to make sure that you have the tools so that it makes it easy for you, so that you don't have to find out the hard way that the bottles, everything's hot and boiling. And so that's what these little devices are for, is you just, you're able to clamp the jar, just use that to be able to put the jar in the water and lift it out and not ever hurt yourself. So that tool is definitely a necessity. You can buy, I just, for this handout, I just Googled the very first thing that looked pretty reasonable. I put on here. So when it says Walmart, you don't have to buy it there. It just, that was the most reasonable source that I could just see by Googling it online. But definitely you can shop around. But they have little getting started, just where you can buy the whole set together that comes with all of the tools. And one of the getting started sets that we found, it comes with the little funnel to help you get things into the jars. It comes with this so that you can use this to help get any air bubbles out of whatever you're bottling. And then see how it has the steps on it. That helps you to measure the headspace. So we'll talk about that a little bit, but in the whenever you're bottling things, the recipe comes with a recommended headspace allowance. And so if it says a ½ inch headspace, then you can use a tool like that, or you can just gauge, kind of judge what a ½ inch is. But if you have a tool like that, it just makes it slip to be able to see, okay, that's where it goes to the rim of the jar to when you fill it. And so it definitely helps to make sure that you have the tools so that you don't hurt yourself. The one tool that I couldn't find to bring with us, but I think it's pictured here, it's just a little magnetic ended item, and it looks like a pencil in the picture, but it just has a magnet on the end, so that when you heat up your lids and your rings, instead of having to get in the hot water to get your lid out, it just has a magnet on it, so it lifts it right out for you, and then you can put it on the jar. So that saves you from that. Otherwise, you can carefully use a fork or something, but the magnet helps, makes it easier. So this handout, I did not include the directions that I put up here on the wall because one of my big recommendations is to get started is to just pick up a ball blue book. Every year they come out with a new one. The basic recipes are all the same, but it's amazing. So that anything that you think that you want to model, there's usually a recipe in here. And I think it's listed here, $11 at Walmart. I think at Ace Hardware it was 14 maybe or something. So they're pretty reasonable, but it has incredible information in it. And you can see in the very beginning, it just goes through all of the basics of getting started. And it explains the headspace, because every one of the recipes will tell you to allow a certain amount of headspace. And that's just so that it doesn't ooze out of your jar as it's in the hot water bath. If whatever you're putting in the jar, if it's hot to begin with, then it usually requires less headspace, because as it heats up, it will expand. And you'll notice, I think in every blue book that I've ever had, it has this great section about tomato canning. So it takes you step by step through with the pictures, and it follows these same steps where the very first thing you do is to get your bottles and your lids ready, and make sure that the recipe will give you kind of an estimate as far as how many jars that you'll be able to fill with that recipe. And so you have to kind of gauge ahead how many bottles you'll fill, but you just want to make sure that you're starting with good, clean bottles. Sometimes once we get our hot water bath water going, we'll just dip them in there just to make sure that in that hot water that they're purified. So it just depends, I think, on what we're bottling. If we start out with hot jars, so that's the first step, is just to get your bottles and your lids and your rings ready. And since we're old school canners, we always heat our lids up, just in we boil some water just in a little bowl in the microwave, and then pull it out and put our lids in there, and it just, I guess it helps it to seal. At least that's what we've understood, so that's why we do it. But so we just heat those up, and so then the next step. So I just wanted to break it down into 5 simple steps, so it doesn't feel too overwhelming to you, because I think for our daughter-in-law, that was the thing that just making the jam was overwhelming enough, and then worrying about how to hot water bath it just put her over the edge. So it's 5 simple steps, and just don't let it overwhelm you, because once you do it a few times, then it's really easy, and you'll wonder why you were worried about it. But so the first step we talked about, step 2 is to prepare the food. So just depending on what you're doing, then you'll get the food prepared. So if we follow this picture of the tomatoes, what they're doing is taking the stems off, and then with tomatoes, they usually recommend that you slip the skins off. And the simple way that we found to do that is we had an old deep fat fryer. I don't know if any of you still have deep fat fryers, but we plug that right next to our sink and just put water in it. And then you have the basket, so you can lower a whole basket full of tomatoes all at once, and you leave it down in the boiling water for about a minute and pull it out, and you can see how the skin starts to crack. And then we just immediately put it into our cold water in the sink, usually ice water, and the skins will just come right off. It makes it so simple. And anything like peaches and tomatoes, we do that same way. We just plug it in right next to the sink. It keeps the mess right there at the sink, and it makes it really simple to do a whole batch at once, to just drop it in with a basket and then put it right into the ice water. So once your food's prepared, then you just ladle it into the jars, and that's where having some kind of funnel that fits the jar nicely. We have an old metal one that goes with this, was part of this set. But for some reason, when I was gathering things, I couldn't find it, but any one that just gives you a lip enough to be able to put it down in the jar, it just really helps to be able to get everything in the jar, and it helps to keep the rim of the lid clean. So that's the next step, is once you fill the jar, then you clean the rims, and we usually just get a clean cloth or a damp paper towel, and it's just a matter of just wiping it around the edge of the jar, and then you're ready to secure the lid. And usually it's just finger tight. You don't need to really crank it down. It's just finger tight till you feel like it
If you
stops.
crank it down, it builds pressure and it'll bend your lid, and chances are it'll still, so you just, when it heats up, it needs to release that pressure. The stuff's gonna expand, and it's gonna, if you get it too full, then it's gonna, like those peaches over there, it's gonna lose some moisture.
Well, and peaches, we found that if we turn the canner off and let it cool down with the peaches in it, then you won't lose as much juice off of the top. Otherwise, if you take this out of the hot water bath, it tends to want to keep boiling out and over, and then you lose juice out of it. So so that's a trick that we've found, is
Yeah,
you just
anything that you can,
turn it off, let it cool down a little before you remove the jar from the water.
anything that you can hot, seems you have a lot less stuff oozing out.
Like the
less-
applesauce is hot
yeah,
when we
applesauce.
when we boil
That's
it.
the nice thing about this big thing here, is we'll just core and slice the apples and just throw them in there on the stove, and then you just cook it until they're tender, and then you just put them in the Vitamix, and everything stays hot. Vitamix pour them right into those jars, and before you know it, you've got 7 of them and a batch ready. So
Does it say on the recipe if you're filling cold or hot what the headroom should be?
Yeah, it does.
if it's hot, if it's really boiling hot, like an applesauce or a juice, it's only like a 1/4 inch. In fact, you pour it in, and sometimes before you get all 7 of them filled, you'll see it lowering, because it's cooling. So if it's hot, yeah, just a 1/4 inch.
And then
Most
about
of your
how much
jams.
is it cold? How much room do you usually?
Each recipe in here, it tells you the exact headspace to allow. So if you just read the recipe, it will tell you exactly what to do.
Cold
And
stuff's usually like a 1/2 or 3/4.
like on the jams, then we'll leave a little bit more headspace.
Well, the jam is usually hot, it usually comes right out of
That's,
that.
that's true.
Is there
It's-
any risk if you left too much space to going bad?
No, no.
It's
It
just waste of the jar.
It
Yeah,
just wastes
yeah,
space.
it just, you'll
Because
just
that's
have
how
more.
mine turned out last year.
As with that extra space.
Everyone's like, why didn't you fill them more? Well, I filled them with cold ingredients, so I couldn't,
Yeah,
I didn't know.
yeah, because as it cooks too, as the fruit cooks, then, yeah, it adjusts in the jar too, so. And we find that with our tomatoes, that we feel like we've just packed it in as tight as we possibly could, and there's usually always space at the top, so. So
And
yeah,
and
it's
releasing
okay
the air down the side helps too, if you
with
run a knife
the tool,
down the edge.
yeah.
You'd
Either
be
a tool
surprised how
or the
much
knife.
air comes up out of there. It's trapped down in there, so.
So, okay, so I think we talked about cleaning the rims and putting the rim on the jar, and just so it's finger tight. So then step 4 is to place the jars into the hot water bath. And for both here in Diamond Valley and Cameron, you add 10 minutes for the elevation. So any recipe that you find that it tells you to hot water bath it for 25 minutes, then you add 10 minutes to that, so that it'll be 35 minutes. And it's all based on elevation, and you'll even find that at the beginning of the, it's on this page, the elevation chart. It gives you an elevation chart so that it will tell you how much time to add. But I did Google both Dameron and Diamond Valley, and it said 10 minutes for both of us, according to our elevation. So, so every recipe, just to remember, always add 10 minutes, and then that'll process it long enough. So the whole idea is that it's trying to heat whatever product you're processing all the way through, and the elevation affects how fast it heats up. So, so yeah, the 10 minutes, and then the last step is then to remove the jars from the hot water bath, and then usually leave it. We'll put it on a towel on the counter or a rack, or just somewhere, even out on our deck. When we get so many bottles of apple juice going, we just leave it out on the deck for a day, and then we'll go back through and we'll check to see if it's sealed. So if it pops like that, then your jar, your food hasn't sealed. So don't put it on the shelf because it will spoil. You can reprocess it again in the water bath to try to get the jar to seal, or just make sure you use that one very first. Put it in your fridge and use it right away. But so that's something you always check to see. If it pops like that, then you know that it hasn't sealed, but otherwise there's no sound. It sits securely so that when you push in the middle of it, there's no noise like that. So that's critical to remember to always check once it's sat for about 24 hours. And once you take it out of the hot water bath, you'll hear them ping, ping. You'll hear them as they're sealing. That it just sucks that down and stops it from being able to pop. So so that's a critical thing to watch for. So
When I'm pulling them out, I always like to screw them down tighter too. I crank them down, I figure, well, you know, that seal is nice and pliable right now. And so I'm gonna create an indent in it, you know, like screwing that one down. And then after, do you have any more else?
go ahead.
Oh, when we, a lot of times like the peaches and stuff, they will ooze a little bit of juice out of there, and it'll get in between the ring and the glass. And so once they're set for, you know, half a day or a day, take the ring off, and I'll just take them in the sink and just scrub the ring and the jar to get out, you know, whatever juice, because sometimes, man, you cannot get those things
Yeah,
off.
it's really hard.
You gotta
to
run
get.
it in hot water for 10 minutes to get enough of it off
Yeah,
after it's
we'll get
dry.
some hot water
Yeah.
and set the jar upside down in it just to loosen the ring, to be able to get the ring off. But if you clean it after it's cooled off, then there's never a problem.
A
And
lot of people
take the ring
take the ring off and store without the ring, but
so that it's
Yeah,
just
I-
the sealed layer.
every jar is sold with the ring. And I don't know, it's just a mental thing for me. I feel like that ring, after you've got it all clean and stuff, that ring kind of helps protect the lid and stuff, and so.
As long as you have it loose, kind of loose on there, so that you know if something's happened to it and it didn't seal completely, then you'll know that it's gone bad, and then you won't eat it. So that's why people a lot of times will take the ring off, just because, yeah, if the lid is loose, then you know you have a problem. So
When we clean our jars, we'll clean them pretty good by hand, and then we'll put in the dishwasher. A lot of times we take them out of the dishwasher hot, we store them with a ring and load the lid on them. And a lot of times they'll still right back down, and they'll, you know, pop, and they're like, you know, just the heat from it is.
that's just the way we like to store the empty jars. Like you'll see how that one has a label on it, because once we wash it, we just like to store the empty jars with the lid and the ring, just because it keeps the jar clean.
And we've heard you can reuse the old lids. Some people say 4 or 5 times if you don't damage it. I don't recommend that, you know, but they can be used, because we have a freeze dryer now, and we just use old lids for the freeze dryer, and they still look just fine. You can, the jar in the freeze dryer, hit the vacuum mode, and manage to suck the air out of that.
And vacuum seal
Yeah, it's amazing how much air sucks out of there. So I know the old lids can at least for that. You know.
it. We just started holding on to them because we thought if something happens to the supply chain like it did last year and you couldn't even get the lids, but at least we had something. But because that happened, then Mr. Always Be Prepared ordered 2,000 lids for us. So we have a good supply now. But
I ordered some of the Tatler. Have you
our
ever used
neighbor,
those?
our neighbor does.
I've never used it.
Except for reusable.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
we have large and small. They're very finicky, but they do work. You have to be perfect on them for them.
I have them as my backup,
Uh-huh.
you know?
Yeah.
I like
Yeah, our neighbor uses them and she loves them.
that. Really?
Yeah, she has them figured out so that she can seal them every time. But that's what we've heard, that they're sensitive, so that it's hard to make sure they seal every time. And then you have to repeat the process until it does seal, so. Okay. All right. A couple of other things that I brought that I just thought I would share with you. There's this essential food storage cookbook that I found that I just, to me, it's just amazing because I felt like if we need to survive on our food storage, that I want to have some things that will help me to know how to utilize it. And we've tried that we bottle things that we use in our everyday meals, so that it's pretty easy for us. But a couple of things that I just love about this is that she gives a pantry list right in the very beginning of things that you should keep, even if it's just a few extra jars of these things. It's 2.5 pages of a pantry list. But it's amazing, so that then everything that's in this recipe book you can make with whatever's in this pantry list, so that you don't have to worry about if you have the ingredient or not. And it even has a section in the back with substitutions of things that you can substitute if you don't have that item. And anyway, it's just something that I felt like I'm just gonna have that for use, that if there's hard times ahead, that we'll be able to use this and do more creative meals with the few basics that we have. And yes.
What was the name of it?
It's titled Essential Food Storage Cookbook.
Bye.
And it's, it looks like 2 different authors, Carol Peterson and Tammy, what would you say that last name is?
Looks like Gersberger. Gersberger. Or, yeah, it's got to be a G, doesn't it? Gersberger.
Yeah. And the thing that I appreciated that she did is that she has breakfast, brunch items, and then main dishes. She said if we're eating off of just what we have stored, then we're going to be eating 2 meals a day. We're not going to have 3 meals a day. We can have a snack before bed or a snack sometime if we're hungry, but otherwise we're eating 2 meals a day. So it's broken down with breakfast, and then just main dishes, and then dessert and snacks. So anyway, I've really enjoyed having that with my storage, just so that I know there's some other resources. She even tells how to make cheese with powdered milk and things that you can have ahead of time, so that if you can't go to the store to get cheese, that you're able to do that. So that was just something I thought you might be interested in, since it's a preparedness class. And I did bring a couple of other things when you're making the jams. The Sure Gel, this is just one brand that you can get of the pectin, and the directions are in here for whichever kind of fruit that you're making the jam. And so just follow that, the recipe there, and then it usually tells you in the recipe how long to hot water bath it. And so that's something that you'll want to have when you get ready to do jams. The citric acid, that helps just to keep your fruits just more crisp and fresh looking, so
Well,
you
they say,
can add it.
they say the tomatoes nowadays don't have enough acid, safe from water bath. So, yeah, add,
You know,
they
that or
always
lemon
say
juice.
add lemon juice or citric acid. And,
So if we're doing like this seasoned tomato sauce, we don't want to add lemon juice to it because it changes the flavor of it. Especially when we do spaghetti sauce, it would change the flavor so that our kids just, oh, I don't like this homemade kind. Because it had the lemon juice flavor in it just to try to bring the acid level up. So if it has the citric acid, it doesn't change the flavor of it. So it's helpful to have some of that on hand, and then this was just some pickling for the pickles. So
They go back and forth on the acid. Ashley Johnson, that used to live up here, she had her tomatoes tested, and they said they had enough acid in them. So I think the ball book just wants to cover
make
the
sure that
liability and
it's
stuff,
safe,
so.
that
so
there's
they-
no way that it will get any kind of botulism in it. So that's why they tell you to either add lemon juice or citric acid to it.
Are all fruit acidic enough to not add anything to them?
We add,
I think peaches are just sugar, just light syrup and,
well, we added vitamin C to,
oh yeah, just kind of
Ours.
hold the color, we,
um,
just like a,
But it's not necessary, it's not essential.
no.
the recipe, it doesn't require it, so.
So like any fruit, the plums, the apricots.
Yeah, I can't think of any fruit that, some of the jams will tell you that.
To add some lemon juice there, yeah, that is true. When you're doing it, it'll tell on the directions with the pectin how much lemon juice to add to your jam.
Do you have to use the pectin?
Only if you want it to thicken, that's really the thickener in it. And so if you just want it whatever consistency the fruit creates, then you wouldn't have
It'd be
to.
more like an ice cream topping or something,
It would just,
You
it'd be
get
like
the
a
effect, man.
Well, there's other things that I use, like tapioca starch.
yeah.
Instead of that, that would be okay to
Uh-huh.
use? Okay.
I've even researched making our own pectin, it's just comes up from the apples, usually from
Yeah.
the
If
core
you
or
use
the
the
peel.
peels, you don't really need to add any of those things, like even I use the peels on everything in my applesauce, it gets really thick.
Yeah, our applesauce, we use the Vitamix and blend it, and so you can't even tell that the pills are in there. So,
It's gotta be better for you if you're trying to use everything, peels and pulp and everything.
It makes a lot more,
Yeah.
and no peeling.
yeah,
Yeah.
takes half the work out of it, yep.
We enjoy the apple juice, even though it's probably not good for us, but we'll have the kids up for Sunday dinner and go through a gallon of apple juice
Oh,
for dinner.
do you want to show the jar? Like in the bottom of the jar, you'll see that there's a little bit of,
Oh,
a little bit of pulp. It comes out of the juicer so fast that it gets kind of foamy, and so we use some cheesecloth and try to filter the foam out. But it's the pulp and the foam that creates that. So we'll just keep a little filter and pour the jar through the filter to get that out. Or I don't mind drinking it with the pulp in it. It doesn't bother me, but the kids still, they don't enjoy it. So we usually filter it for them.
my dad's apples were all red. I think he had like Clemens. Macintosh or something.
Macintosh.
Macintosh, yeah. That's a really good one. They only had one tree of that, but the rest of them just look like red delicious. But even at that, you get different colors of the apple juice. But yeah, our Granny Smith, it seems like it makes a really, really good applesauce. I gave some to the Mayoris's one year when I went off the coast. She did it with no sugar at all. Her husband said, man, I can't believe this doesn't have any sugar in it, it's just so flavorful and sweet, so.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I think we covered everything, so definitely any questions that you have.
The lifter, can you use, is that rack that's in the bottom, is that designed to lift your jars?
This
in and
rack
out?
is here.
Yeah, but once it's hot, you don't, the water is usually up by the handles, and so
Get your 7 jars out.
So we will use that to lower it down in, but with our new cans, we just put them in and take them out with this. But this one.
That'll come out and then you
It's
hook it right there.
made to sit on the lip of the can, and so then you can load all of your jars in and then just place that down in the water. But once it's down in the water, usually there's 2 in there, but usually it's up where it's hot and
Unless you got some
Do you
tough
ever
hands.
do 2 levels when you're
If we're doing pints, yeah.
it depends, sometimes we'll, but most of the time we just do one level, yeah. If we're down to the end of our whatever we're bottling, and there's only a couple of jars left and they're smaller than we'll put them in. But usually we just do the one layer.
Well, one other thing we've got to do is, when you get the jars in there, if you could just put like a half a cup of white vinegar in there, it keeps all the white stuff off your jars. and
half
stuff.
a cup?
Yeah. Just,
Okay.
just
And
keep
if
your jars
I'm-
in there.
If I'm bottling something that's room temperature and I'm doing multiple batches, how cool does the water have to be to start the jars on the second batch?
We don't usually just let it.
If we've got time, we just let
Change it all out,
the-
you have to cool it down completely.
I use clean water every time because the stuff comes out of the jars that we don't necessarily want to get in the next jars. So I always dump my water out and put clean water in.
Okay.
But if we're doing the same thing over and over, like applesauce, one right after the other, then we usually just let it cool down slightly, just so it's not,
boiling.
just so it's not oozing out. So yeah, it definitely not boiling. And then just be really careful when you put the jars in. We've found if you put the jars straight in, that's when and it's really hot, that's when on the cheaper jars, the mainstay,
Kerr seems like the ones that
Kerr and mainstay.
crack on me, but it's always right at the
Right,
bottom.
right along the bottom, as soon as it hits that hot water, it'll just pop and you lose everything that's in there. So, so that's the only thing, just watch and make sure that it's definitely cooler than boiling.
Would that be,
And-
if you were processing a lot, would you use 2?
We get
So
4
that you
going
have-
sometimes.
Or at the same time? Okay.
If we have a lot to do, then we'll do 2 in the house and 2 outside. Just so that they're on the bigger burners and just get them done faster, but and we've found if you put your bottle in on an angle, that helps too, so that it doesn't pop the bottom out, but I don't know if that makes a
Just let
big
it cool
difference.
down, or like you say, if you,
But
Yeah.
we want it to be about the same temperature. What you're putting
Yeah.
in there is the same temperature as the water.
you
So
know,
there isn't that shock.
it's the safest way to do it, so. One night, when we were introduced to the Ruby 2000, our neighbor had one, and we had a bumper crop of apples in our house. And for some reason, they were just falling off the tree. They were good sized apples, but so you could go out and shake the tree and get a couple of bushels off it, but
We just
Anyway.
lined the boxes up there on the tree and filled the boxes.
anyway, that one night we did, was it 105?
At least,
105
maybe more
jars
than that.
of apple juice. So we had,
So we had all the kids lined up at the counter with the apple peeler cord, the slicer, and then they were running them through the machine as fast as they could, and the rest of us were bottling them as fast as. And what did we have, 4 cannons going that night? So,
anyway, so we did, and I don't think they took half, they probably took 30 or 40 was all. So
anyway,
it was fun.
Major safety concerns, what would you say watch out for on safety?
Well, so there's certain things that have to be pressure canned, or they say that you have to pressure can them. So meats, pressure can, you shouldn't water bath them. But we actually just watched a YouTube video that the Amish never pressure can anything. So so you can watch that same video and you can decide that they hot water bath everything. They just increase the amount of time that they cook it. So
You're saying for meat, they do that?
that even meat, they hot water bath, but I don't know.
I would recommend it.
Yeah.
And like for when we do deer and elk, it's like, seems like it's like 90 minutes or something like that. It's a long pressure, 10, 15 pounds.
So the YouTube video that we watched, they hot water bath their meats at least 3 hours. So it's a long process, and that's why, just to make sure that it leaks through, but yeah, that's the thing to watch for, is that meats or anything that's low in acid, then it shouldn't be hot water bath. Unless
All
you're
your
Amish.
So all vegetables are low in acid except tomatoes,
Yeah,
Yeah, so like green beans, they said if you add some,
unless you're Amish.
yeah, the green beans, they said that they would cook theirs for 3 hours in the water.
3 hours.
But I guess
I
that's,
wouldn't even want them probably by next time, you'd be like mush.
they looked beautiful in their
They
jars,
did.
but I don't know.
we had a neighbor, the Smiths, it's gone now, but they had a great stall out in front of their yard, and they would just run their that into the jar, tap down the lid, and that was it. They never water bathed them.
Jerry and I survived my days of canning, refrigerator canning, and I heard it's called something else. But I used to just put leftover soup every night, or chili, or anything. No, I didn't know anything about the acidic stuff, but I had a friend teach me this that was much older. And I would put it in hot in the jar, put the lid on it, not fresh seal, just whatever was in the drawer, flip it over so it would heat up, and turn it back over, and it would vacuum, and I'd put it in the refrigerator for months, and we would eat it, and it was fine, except for one time. And it was fermenting, it was curry, it was vegetarian, but it was fermenting and bubbling, and I knew it was bad. It was like, take that to the trash, don't even wash that one out.
That's
But
that's
I
what
wouldn't
this
do that
Amish lady
now.
said, is she's like, you'll know if it's bad.
Yeah.
It will smell, but Larry's like, I don't know that botulism smells, so I
That's what
don't.
they say,
So,
but
yeah,
it
I don't
tastes
guess.
like-
Yeah,
So, well, that's my concern, because my mom was terrified of botulism, and any food poisoning for that matter. Probably where she grew up in western Kansas, and if you got sick, you didn't have much help.
that's true.
So, so she kind of instilled in me the spirit of doing this. And, so is botulism mostly with tomatoes?
Yeah, well, it can be on
Anything that's.
and it's a neurotoxin, it will kill you, so it's very serious and it is something to be concerned about.
And it grows.
But if you do it right, you're fine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Before you eat it.
Absolutely.
So if you follow what they have
In the blue book?
and everything in here is tested.
Okay.
And so if you follow this exactly and make sure your lids are sealed, then that they don't pop, then you shouldn't have a problem.
Okay.
So like she was saying, 10 years, this, you know, they'll tell you, oh, you can get 18 months out of these lids, but we've had elk and deer meat that you don't throw that stuff away, and it's 10, 12 years old, and it tastes just like it did 2 years old. I mean,
Yeah.
it's good, so.
Because it's been processed and in there, there's no bacteria, it's killed everything.
Yeah.
If it's been done correctly.
Why are things such a short shelf life in the stores when?
Because they want you to buy more.
Okay.
I want you to throw it away.
Yeah.
And the metal cans, they might start to seep at the seams and
And then
have
have
other
last,
problems like that.
liner that leaches into your food.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when I was a kid, we did jam and we just did put it in there, turned it upside down for a little while and turned it back over. We never water bathed it. Again, you
Yeah,
know.
the Smiths lived till they were, how old were they, 95?
Yeah,
You know, they never got hurt by the grape juice right into there, never water about that stuff.
But now I
So-
definitely.
So any questions, there's experts. And so that's why I included this on the back of your handout, because the Utah State Extension Office, that's what they're there for. There's some incredible experts there. They offer all kinds of classes, and you can go and have hands-on, or they have virtual classes. I looked online to see if they had any classes coming up, since we're approaching canning season, and it looked like they'd already, June 14th was their last one this spring. But it said that there's on-demand virtual classes that you can take. And so any questions, they're so awesome to help you with. And they have experts that, that's their job, is to make sure that you're canning safely and properly at home. So that's why I included this on there, because we're definitely not experts. We have some experience with it, but they're the experts. So you can definitely check with them. And on their website, they listed 2 resources, the Ball Blue Book, and then they had another resource listed there too. So if you felt like you wanted a couple of sources of information, just to compare and make sure that that it's good and accurate information, you can find that on their website also. But so that's what this whole page is about, is just where to get more information, and you can take classes from them. They have all kinds of classes that are going up in Cache Valley, but nothing around here. So, but you could check with them, just call this phone number and they would be able to tell you what they have available and what's going on. So, any other questions? Because I think that was everything we thought we would share with you.
The only other thing I can think of is if you're doing something that's easy to prepare, you can fill your dishwasher full of jars and lids. And by the time that's done, they're coming out hot and you're putting your stuff in. That's a pretty easy way
To do a whole bunch of jars all at once.
to sanitize them and have them hot if you're doing something that's hot. That's pretty.
So you don't have to, that was the question I had. Some people put the lids in boiling water and then the jars.
Yeah, sometimes we'll do that. We'll have the water bath with water already and dip our jars and then hurry and fill them. So it just depends on what we're bottling and how many jars we need, and if if that's our first batch going through the water bath. So
How long for the jars in water to clean?
we just dip them,
Okay.
empty the water out, and set them on the counter and fill them up.
A lot of times, though, if it's cold stuff, we're starting with a cold pot or lukewarm, so you can't really do that. So
Okay.
So who can give a class on fermenting?
there.
She's the expert.
I was gonna say Larry will.
Oh, Larry will.
Do you water bath your ferments?
we have it.
We
I
just-
think that kills the good stuff.
That kills the good
It kills the good stuff, but in times like this, when we have a good cabbage harvest, tomato harvest, then you don't have to worry about the tomatoes being acidic enough. Have you ever had fermented tomatoes, fermented salsa?
We've done green beans and
Cabbage.
cabbage, so sauerkraut.
You gotta make some fermented salsa or tomatoes. It makes the best sauce. It's out of this world. But that, from what I understand, I've never canned it, that you don't have to change anything to it because it has the lactic acid naturally.
Uh-huh.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm
we're
gonna
gonna
try. I'll let
We
you know.
we have several extra fridges in our garage, because we have such a big family, and so all of the fermented things we just keep in there, and they stay just perfect for
Perfect, but there's no
the year.
room.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like, oh my gosh.
yeah,
When you get into fermenting salsa, you use like the
the gallon.
2 quart or the gallon, and then you're like there's no room for anything else,
Oh,
so.
wow, we should have her come teach.
It's on our discussion to find a date for it, yes, absolutely.
All my classes are online too, I teach professionally, that's what I do, is fermentation.
Okay.
Yeah. if you want the info.
Thank you, Patty, thank you, Larry, this was fantastic, thank you very much.
Good job, guys. Thank you.